enlarge it.
I can. I'll tell you what, I'll do that.
I mean, I think oh yeah, there you go. I have it on my other screen, so I don't.
All right, the event is now live and recording.
Thank you. So, wait, did I lose my screen? No. Do you still see it, everybody?
See you on the bottom.
See it.
Okay, very good. This is David Barkin. We're going to start our meeting at this point, the May meeting of the Architectural Licensing Board. Oops, I'm sorry.
Oh, there's the agenda. Okay.
I need to get back to the right document.
No, I just see pictures.
There we go. So the first step is this is David Barkin, Chair of the Architectural Licensing Board. Review of the minutes of the January 17th Architectural Licensing Board meeting. Does anybody have any changes or to make on the minutes?
No, I'm good with them.
Angela, do we have you still live? And Lorraine, are you in?
It's Angela, I'm here. I can move to approve the minutes.
I second it, Phil Cerrone.
Angela and Phil, okay.
I just want to make sure we have Lorraine and Twig available to vote. If you're on the phone call, could you?
It doesn't look like they've called in yet.
Okay. I mean, we have a quorum. Do you want to hold Angela, Phil, or do you want to? Do we want to take a vote on this?
I mean, for the minutes, I think we could take a vote on.
All right. So all in favor signify aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, I think it's unanimous. Okay. Item 2, comments or concerns of any person present today. And that would, I guess, in terms of the meeting here, I would ask, well, Bob, do you have any? We don't really have a sign-in. I'm not sure what we can do about this other than invite Gina from AIA Connecticut if you have any comments or concerns.
There was another gentleman also, David, that we added links. We added the access to Gina and was it Mr. Machado or?
Yeah.
Yeah, Manny. I don't know if he's on.
Manny, I don't think Manny's on.
Okay.
And I have no comments. This is
Okay.
Gina Calabro.
Thank you, Gina. So let's move on to the third item under new business, DCP investigation division complaint status report.
Okay, this is Pamela Brown. I'm here with Janita Hamill. We'll start with looking at the quarterly report. I believe, Janita, you have those.
I sent those last night to everybody.
Yeah.
I don't have access to them. Mr. Barkin will have to click on the email that I sent last night to open them.
Yeah, I have them. If you
I have them too.
You'll have to bear with me. I can bring them onto the screen. I'm not sure how readable they'll be.
Yeah, I don't know, David. I mean, because I have them on my bigger screen, and they're hard to. You got to really blow them up to read them. But
so there was 2 documents. Which document? There was the 01-2017 to 12/31, and then there was the 01-2020 to 4/30.
Yes, sir. The 01-01-17 to 12/31/2019, in order to bring up the files that you wanted to keep going, so you could see their history. That was this report that I ran. So this has the entire history from the last meeting that I presented to you at, right through to the end of December, the 01/2020 to the 4/30/20 are the complaints that have been entered at investigation since January 1st through to yesterday.
Right, so the ones that are open on the first report, there's a whole page of them that are open still. Are those all still open?
Yes. If the report says open, then yes, they are open, sir.
Okay. I just didn't know if any
just-
of them, I didn't know if any of them had been closed since January 1st, because that report only went up to December 31st.
Right.
One quick announcement, either Twig or Loran did dial in, although I've had to mute them because they were getting some feedback from listening to the public side. Anyone who's dialed in, if you need to unmute yourself, hit *6 on your phone. But otherwise, anyone in the meeting should try and keep themselves muted when they're not speaking, just to make it easier for everyone to hear.
All right.
I think
It's
that's not
Loran.
Twig, I think that's Loran, yeah.
I'm on the phone. This is Loran. And yeah, I was getting actually the live event and the phone, and they were timed differently. So I muted the live event.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to mute my phone now.
All right, Lorraine, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so back to, the 12/17 to 1/17 to 12/31/19 does show a series of open items here still. Some of them, and our minutes indicated that we were looking specifically at 17/125 and 17/78.
Yes, going forward, we might need to actually break those out because those complaints are not within the investigation division. They are in legal. So we might need to add a separate line on your agenda going forward to separate things that we would be speaking about that are in investigations and things that legal should address that are in their division. So the 2017-125 is GTS Design, and 2017-78 is Boffey Architecture. Those are both, I believe, assigned to Paulette.
Do we want to know that at this point? I mean, who they are? I thought that stays anonymous.
No, you want
Until
those
they're
addressed, so those are cases that Paulette can handle or speak about. However she wants to, that's legal, that's not us.
Yeah, 78 and 125. Paulette, do you have any, the status of those investigations that you could speak toward? Because that was the specific agenda item.
Yes, I do. So am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yes.
So in both of those cases, I've reached out to respondents, and in I think it's 2017-78, we've reached an agreement to settle the matter. And in 2017, is it 125, the other case? I've reached out to the attorney for the respondent, and he will be getting back to me. So hopefully that one's going to also settle. If not, that will go before the board at some point whenever we have a hearing.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, sir.
Angela, Loran, did you want to have anything else while we have this as an agenda item and in general about the investigations, or no?
It's Angela, no questions. Fran.
All set? Okay, so does everyone sees the agenda at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let's moving down, old business. I don't know, maybe Paulette, can you, because we don't have Jerry here, can you speak to the regulations, or first of all, first 4A is the statutes. there was some changes. Did any of that happen in the session?
So Julianne sent me an email. She apologized she won't be able to make it today. So there's no legislative update. The session was canceled and they don't know when they're going to have a special session. So that's on the statutes. With respect to the regulations, she says there's a legislative regulation review committee scheduled for May 26th to hear the proposed changes to your regulations. And she expects that it's going to happen remotely. And she doesn't have any more information than that. And she says if they don't convene remotely, the regulations will pass on consent.
So just back up a little bit, because that's 4B. 4A, the statutory changes. Do you think that the department package will end up in special session, or will it just get delayed until the next full session, or we don't know?
I don't know. That's
Okay.
all the update I have because I'm not involved at that end. So that's the most I have from Julianne.
Okay, that's fine. And in terms of the regulations, the public period ended, I think, in April, if I'm not mistaken. And I know Jerry Padula, the staff attorney, typically works on that aspect of this. Was there any input during the public comment period?
I don't know because I was not involved in that. I could ask Julianne.
Yeah, I mean, I presume that would have come back to us if there was any, and I didn't hear anything. If this has just been moved forward to the next step, you know,
That's what
and
it sounds like.
yeah, then our assumption is not, but I guess, Bob, we may still want to keep this, the regulation item, well, both of the items, 4A and 4B, should stay open on old business for the next meeting so we can get an update on progress.
Will do.
4C, discussion of renewals of corporate practice relative to ownership requirements. So if I might, this is where we're saying on renewal, we think there should be some attestation to ownership to make sure that the corporations continue to have the requirements per our statutes, I believe, not regulations. Any news on that? I don't know if that's yeah, I guess that would be a Paulette question as well.
I can ask Julianne because when I looked at the minutes, I saw that there was some discussion on that. So I can ask her on Julianne, and I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, that's the nature of the item. Am I getting that right? The other, you know, Phil, Angela, Loran, that was the.
Yes, I believe you are getting it right, David. It's Phil.
I guess so we need to keep that open and get a response back. I mean, at this point, I don't know that reporting out to the board but we need to keep it open for discussion at the next meeting, which would be our July meeting.
I'll carry that forward on the agenda.
Okay. The next item, update from the board chairman on the 2020 regional summit. So I am going to bring up another document. Again, I think you're gonna lose this for a second. I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to share again if I can find the. No,
somebody's trying to get in. I think it might be Twig.
It's me. I've been here the whole time.
It is Twig.
I was on, yeah, just to give you an overview. However things are set up, I could hear every word you were saying, but no one could hear me. I was actually chatting with Jason in the background. So it's just easier to call in.
Right.
Yeah,
All
Twig, I
right.
had the same situation.
Okay, so now I've brought up an email because I wasn't actually attending the meeting that we had with our region.
Oh, geez, that looks familiar to me.
Doesn't it? So I was smart to ask you for this way back when. Phil took notes.
I put it on my screen because I was just going to read off of it. So
provide feedback. Phil, why don't you go ahead and provide feedback from the meeting?
you're fine. I'll just kind of go through this. I mean, so these are some of the items that were discussed at our regional meeting in Cambridge, and one of them was there was a whole lot of conversation about changing the terms of the officers in the region to 2 years versus 3, which would hopefully allow people to move through the system faster, because with 3-year terms, if you start at the bottom in our region and you work you all the way through, it's 9 or 12 years before you kind of get through to the top. And so that's something that's actually on our agenda. I'm assuming that we're doing the virtual meeting in Austin, or for Austin, that we're still going to have some sort of regional meeting the afternoon before. And so this is something we have to have some conversation on, because it is supposedly going to be on our agenda to vote on when we get there. So we need input from everybody on our board and kind of a consensus on our board of what everybody thinks of changing the terms from 3 years to 2. So before I kind of go through the other things, what is everybody's opinion of that?
So is this for what right now? What is the term for the regional?
They're all 3. So the terms are right now. So secretary is actually a maximum of 5 years, and then vice chair, chair, and director are all 3 years. So what we're proposing, I think the proposal would be that secretary could stay as a maximum of 5 years, but it could be less. But the other 3 positions would be a maximum of only 2 years. So it would allow people, if somebody wanted to stay on as secretary, because there'll be people that say, or treasurer, I guess it really is. There'll be people who say, you know what, I want to do something, but I don't really want to move past treasurer. And maybe I want to stay on as treasurer for 3 or 4 years, and that's fine. People can jump over that. But what would it do, I think the proposal would be keep treasurer for a maximum of either 4 or 5 years and change everything else to a maximum of 2 years. So you'd only be vice chair 2 years, chair 2 years, and then director for 2 years. Oh, Angela got on.
I'm
Angela,
fine.
you're muted.
She's muted, Phil. Yep.
Sorry, so can you hear
Yep.
me now?
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yep. I got you.
Yeah.
Both.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the whole thing's working. I'm gonna hang up the actual phone call then. All right, it didn't work the other day, but today it's working.
How did you get it to work?
I don't know. I just went in the same way I went in the other day.
Anyway, input.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Phil.
I'm good.
So-
I'm good with the change as well, Phil.
All right, fine. So then I think that, I mean, well, I don't know who's going to be on the call when we're in Austin, but I'm going to assume that, I know I will be, I'm going to assume that as a board, we're in agreement with the 2 years then.
Yes.
Yeah. I am.
Yep.
This is Twig.
All right, so just kind of a few other things that were discussed is there's constantly a discussion about regional dues and justifications to the states. And I'm sure that now that we're doing these virtual meetings and doing our annual meeting virtually, there's going to be a lot of conversation about, you know, the possibility of reducing dues. I don't know that anybody's bringing anything to the floor, either regionally or nationally, on that, but it is something that's been kind of a lively discussion and will continue to be. It's been something, candidly, that's been discussed for, in all seriousness, 25 years. And it will continue to be discussed. So at some point, we may have to do something with the dues, but that'll be just a conversation as we move forward. The other thing is we're meeting in Vermont, hopefully in October, and we have basically the same format for the educators conference that we did at the last educators conference. And I believe that the regional officers are in the process of sending out, you know, invites and everything to that for that. So I think that's moving along. There was a whole bunch of conversation about architectural schools that are now offering interior architecture degrees. I happen to be on that task force, but there's also a resolution that's tied into that, although we're not going to be voting on the resolutions. But there's, I want to say there's at least a dozen schools in the country that actually offer degrees in interior architecture. And so clearly you come out of school with a degree in interior architecture, people think you can practice architecture. Some of them are actually in the architectural programs of the colleges, but a bunch of them are in fine arts programs or other departments in the university. And clearly it's not the same degree as an architecture degree. So, but the schools are going to do what the schools want to do as far as that. And we don't really have any jurisdiction to be able to tell them that they can't have a program called interior architecture. Now, I would suspect if it was in Connecticut that you're not allowed to use the word architecture, that we have some validity of going back to them and saying, hey, you can't use the word architecture if it's not truly an architecture degree. But, and as far as I know, neither University of Hartford or Yale have any programs like that. I could be wrong, but I believe that that's the case, that none of the schools are local to Connecticut. But there are ones that aren't that far away, for sure. As a matter of fact, RISD has a program where you can get a degree in interior architecture, and it's part of their fine arts program.
So I don't know about CARE or UNH, how they describe their programs, UNH in particular.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I did some research on this, I didn't find that either one of them had a program that insinuated that you were quote unquote interior architect.
Okay, so, thank you.
There was some conversation. There's some changes to the model law that was talked about, and Bobby from New Hampshire had proposed that we add some statements in there that as long as you meet your requirements for your state, that you've met the requirements for the other state. It seemed to get really convoluted, to be honest. And the national officers said there was a whole lot of conversation about that, but they didn't want to do it because all the states have different requirements from the perspective of timelines, not really from the perspective of hours. It seems that for the most part, most of the states in the country are very online with the numbers of hours per year. It's just that some of them do January to January, some of them do month of your renewal, some do your birthday renewal, some of them do 2 years, some of them do 3 years. So it would get a little bit complicated. But I think all in all, everybody's pretty much in favor with the way the model law resolution's being proposed. Again, I don't believe we're voting on any of the resolutions this year, so we can have that conversation a little bit more in detail as we move forward. But and I think both Pamela and David were there on Saturday for the presentation about an architect by the name of Paul Newman, and I think the case was the Vandelay Corporation or something. But this was a guy that you should look it up.
Not an architect, actually.
He was a non-architect who prepared drawings for everything from single-family homes to very, very large multi-family projects, and wasn't licensed any place, had literally taken another architect's number, had a stamp made up, and every time he signed it, he made sure he signed across the number so nobody could figure it out. The state of New York did an amazing amount of investigation on this and literally had to piece documents together before they could figure out what number he was even using, and researched that and contacted the person whose number it really was, who had no knowledge whatsoever. Long story short, they eventually prosecuted him on, numerous numbers of felonies and sent him to jail. And I believe he's out of jail now, but it's quite a remarkable case. And man, he had some nerve with some of the stuff he was doing, literally going to planning and zoning meetings and being introduced as an architect and never contradicting anybody. And and apparently was a little bit arrogant too, but did eventually get caught. So just kind of as a note, and if we talk about the officers that are being proposed for, or that have been elected for all the regions, we are as a country becoming more diverse on our boards. We now have 3 regional chairs and 2 vice chairs that'll be females starting in June when we come to that meeting. So there's some movement of diversity around the country. I mean, obviously it's going to take a while before we get to where we should be, but at least it seems to be moving a little bit in the right direction. We should say
it's gender diversity. But
gender diversity, correct.
Very little ethnic diversity.
Right. So, I mean, that pretty much is. National came in, talked to us a little bit about their backup exam. There was a whole lot of conversation about the money that's being spent on some of those things. There was some conversation about the software programs that were being developed and that are going to be sold. And that's still moving along on course. But they are developing a whole backup exam that's going to be locked away in some mountain in Montana. Well, not really, but that's going to be locked away someplace, God forbid, that the exam gets completely short-circuited and somebody has it and we have to come up with a new exam. So there's a whole committee formed that's working on that now. So I think that's pretty much a summary. I mean, we will need to, David, talk about the one thing that I think we are voting on for June would be the officers. So we do need to talk about them. All the officers came in, and when we get to that point on the agenda, I chime in a little bit more on that. So
Okay,
you were at the meeting too, if you have anything else to add.
No, you're a copious note taker. Thank you, Phil. I want to let me get back to the agenda again. It's going to get there we go. I guess, Phil, we're not voting on the bylaws because are the bylaws not being voted on at the annual meeting?
My understanding was that they're not voting on any of the resolutions. So I don't know if that includes the bylaws or not. I mean, I guess that's.
I totally missed that. So they're taking the three resolutions off the table. Why?
That I'm 100% sure of. I'm going to
Yeah, the email said, this is Angela, the email said that all the resolutions would be deferred to next year in Philadelphia.
So that means the bylaws are the third resolution. So there's no reason to talk about the bylaws here. So there's nothing to vote on.
Right.
In terms of item 5B2.
Right. That was my understanding too.
All right. And 5B1, which I jumped over, was a designation of the voting delegate for the NCARB annual business meeting this June. We do have to physically put that, Bob Kuzmich, don't we need to tell NCARB now who our voting delegate is?
Yes, you do.
Typically we do. I mean, typically there's a form that I would have completed and emailed to them. But now of course the format will be different, but usually yes. We have to.
Well, the format's going to be the same. You still have to fill out the form and email it to them. It's just the voting part.
I think it was. Wasn't it part of the regional package? The form. Bob. I feel I'd like you to be that.
Sure, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, and even whether I attend or not, does anybody have any objection to Phil being our voting representative at the annual meeting? Angela?
No.
No.
No. That's fine.
It's Angela. No,
okay, with Twig.
All right. So I think that's, I don't know, do we need to vote on that? Let's vote on it anyhow. I move that Phil Cerrone is our Philip Cerrone. What do you have, like the third or something like that?
I do have the third, actually.
Be our voting member at the virtual annual meeting. Is there a second? Angela seconds. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. I think it's unanimous.
Thanks.
And
Okay.
let's move on. So now we're at the we're going to skip 2 because there's nothing to vote on, and we're going to talk about national leadership candidates. Okay, so there are two contested positions. Of course, at the annual meeting, somebody else could sort of show up and vote and raise their hand, and that would have to then be discussed by members of the board at some point during the annual meeting. If another candidate is proposed during the, I guess, actually during the meeting, right, where that occurs. But we can't. I think we should just deal. Obviously, we have to deal with what we know, and what we know is that that the,
It was secretary and public board member, wasn't it, that were contested?
The
it's
two
public,
contested are, yeah, it's board
public
secretary
member.
and public member.
yeah. So it's starting, okay. Candidate oh no, I had this wrong. I thought I had it right. There she is. I'll put this up. So for the office of, is it secretary?
Yes.
We have Mary Morissette, Steve Schreiber from our region, currently regional director, and oh no, yeah, it's just no. There was another
Ken
one.
Van Tine. Ken
Yeah,
Van Tine.
that's him right there.
That's in there.
Ken Van Tine. And I'll start off a discussion. I'm particularly impressed with Mary Morissette's volunteerism. I think was really what sets her apart. You know, if you look at this, she's got a very long history of providing mentorship, other kinds of advocacy on the AIA. She's worked a great deal with NCARB. You know, I think from a diversity perspective, she provides additional diversity on the board, which is not that, but I think she's also the most qualified for many reasons. And like I said, I'm particularly impressed with her volunteerism. I've known Mary for a few years. I think she's an excellent candidate. Steve, anybody else have any comments about Mary that they'd like to share?
Yeah, I do. So, and let me first start with, I don't disagree with you, David, and I would just add to that when we were in the meeting and all three of these people came in and did a presentation to us, that the one thing that impressed me more about her than the other two really was she talked about what could she do and what would she do for the conference and for the organization versus just telling us all the great things about themselves. So right. All in all, without question, I ranked her the highest of the three of them.
I agree with that. This is Lorianne. I thought she had a vision and no one else really even stated vision.
Mm-hmm.
This is Angela. I've been in some breakout sessions with Mary, NCARB conferences. She shows a lot of leadership when she's holding those sessions. So I personally recommend her as well.
I think she was part of the model law task force. Anybody that was able to sustain that for 4 years deserves a shout out. But
yeah, so David, I mean, I don't know that we need to talk too much about the other two. I'm going to make a motion. I assume we have to vote on this. I'm going to make a motion that we recommend that we as a board vote for Mary as secretary.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's Twig.
We'll give Twig the second this time, Bob. So, and any further discussion? None. Okay, all in favor of Mary Morissette as secretary, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
One more? No? Lorianne?
Yeah.
I think it's unanimous.
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
All right.
David, would it help if you did like a roll call?
Sure. That's
voting?
So smart. Twig, you're the best. That's what we'll do next. Let's move to the public member. And the first candidate is Gary I. Let me, I'll start a discussion about Gary. He's been on a national committee with me for the past year. I've seen him a lot around. He's been part of the NCARB community since I think he was first appointed in 2001, I believe. He's been on a board for multiple. Let me see. I think it might have been in his letter. This is not it.
This is Lorianne. Can you
Yes.
guys hear me? My impression of Gary was that he was very active for a very short period of time, having been involved, and has real compassion about what he's doing.
Has
So-
real what?
Compassion.
Yes. Well, he's been on the Maryland board for 17 years. And his NCARB experience is for the last, since 16, so for 4+ years, he's been on doing committee work. He's a superintendent, I believe, with Whiting, no, this other company. He was with Whiting Turner, but he's with Whiting Turner superintendent. I think that's his current job. Anyhow, he brings a construction perspective, which is different than anybody else currently on the board. Anybody else want to comment on Gary? Have had a chance to work with him? I mean, I think he's a pleasant guy. He's kind of shy.
Yeah, David, it's Phil Cerrone. I don't know him personally, honestly, but and I don't know Mark Glenn, who's running against him personally either. But so I'm basing my opinion just on the two presentations they both did, and I definitely think he was the better choice of the two of them.
Hi, it's Angela. I've met Gary a couple of times at some of the conferences. He's very open-minded, very pleasant to work with. He listens well. I unfortunately haven't had much experience with the other candidate, but I would think that Gary would be a good fit.
This is Twig. I don't know either candidate. I've read the resumes of both. Which this is they're eligible to replace Daryl Ham. Am I recalling that correctly?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, and that position, based on what I've seen of Daryl's leadership, is a fair amount of coordination. It's just like herding cats, I think, to some extent. So does that factor into, based on what you know about each of these candidates, are they able to do that?
I'm not sure if I understand. I mean, a public member is just like any other member of the board. They're assigned certain committee responsibilities and other things. I'm not sure there's specific role of the public member other than representing the public voice.
It's Angela.
Okay,
It seemed to me like Daryl Ham had quite a load of work. That it was a pretty hefty ask to be the national public member. So I don't know if I'm interpreting your question correctly, Twig, but which one of these candidates would have the fortitude to take on this?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't phrase my question as well as Angela did, but yeah, Daryl Ham is I hear from him, I'm guessing at least once a month, where he's got some kind of conference call going. He's got a subcommittee happening. He's got all kinds of stuff going on. So it really is, I think this is it plays a pretty prominent role in the board, because he is always, he's always on my radar.
Is that because you're a public member and he reaches out specifically to public members?
That's what I was saying.
Yes. I don't know what Lorianne sees from him. I'm assuming that we all see the same thing, but
Well,
if
we
I
don't
were to
see
go
any. I
back,
don't see much from Daryl Ham at all.
you probably don't, because I'm a public member, but I'll bet you if I go back and look at my my ALB folder, I'm guessing that about 70% of the emails are going to be from Daryl Ham.
This is Lorianne. I agree with Twig. He has a lot of presence in herding and advising us as public members what's going on. I haven't seen yet the face of the other gentleman. I remember who's running for this position. I remember Gary standing out in my mind when I was listening to both people. I don't know either of them, but I would imagine the superintendent would be capable of organizing and herding as well as anybody else.
That's the other one.
Yeah, Dave, can you put up the face of the other one? I just simply don't remember what he looks like because he didn't stick out in my mind.
He's up now. Hopefully you can see it.
Right, and I will say, Loran, you're 100% right, and the three of us were there, and after the presentations, we all leaned towards Gary based on what we knew about him that day. So.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Sorry, one more comment. This is Angela. We have two very diverse backgrounds here. We have an attorney and we have a construction superintendent. Whereas one might lean towards the attorney for some reasons, I think NCARB as an organization is very well stocked. Mike Armstrong, for example, with folks with legal background. So perhaps, and I haven't seen too many folks in leadership at NCARB with a construction background. And even though I'm a Hawkeye and love people from University
We
of
don't
Iowa,
hold that against you.
I think to me it's intriguing to have someone with a construction background enter this role.
I second that that thought. I think I was gonna say the same thing, but so thanks for bringing that up, Angela.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay, a motion.
Sure, I'll move to that the Connecticut board will nominate or vote for Gary.
Gary, aye.
Gary, aye.
Second.
Twig, I'll second it.
Twig seconds. All in favor. We'll do by roll call. Twig.
Aye.
Twig. Aye. Okay. Loran.
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
Phil.
Aye.
And aye for David. Okay, so it's unanimous, and let's get back to the agenda.
David,
Yes.
this was for the position, is for the position of the public director, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. 5C. And don't let me forget, I have an item to add as we move on here, Bob. But 5C, the following candidates have passed the architect registration exam and are recommended by the Department of Consumer Protection for licensing as architects in the state of Connecticut. We have 11 candidates. Are there any that we need to add before we go through the list, Bob, or is this the list?
This is the most current.
Okay, very good. So number one is Philip Blaker. 2 is Laura Krosky. 3 is Mark Daniel Finelli. 4, Philip Conrad Grimaldi. 5 is Mark Huang, I would think. 6 is Matthias James Kelly. 7 is Theodore Michael Levis. 8 is Garrett William Lord. 9, Alexander S. Melko. 10, Toar Sadia, and 11 is John E. Vitti. Any board members have any experience with any of these members, just as an acknowledgement that they want to share before we vote?
This is Loran. I actually have worked with Laura Krosky and her father's firm in litigation matters. Pleasant, experienced Laura is anyway. So that's all I have to add to it.
Thank you. Noted. Any other further comments anybody wants to make? If not, let's have a motion to approve.
It's Phil.
This is Loran. I move to approve the members listed on our list 1 through 11 for the approval of their licenses.
Second.
It's Phil. I'll second it. Phil.
Okay. So we'll start. Phil. Oh, all in favor? Phil.
Aye.
Aye.
Wait, I didn't do my roll call. Wait a second, this is just, Angela, what's your
Make
vote?
up your mind, David. Yes, this is Angela. Aye.
Okay, Twig,
Aye.
Loran,
Aye.
David says aye, it's unanimous. All right, I'm
Loran,
trying.
you motion, David, or Loran, me motion first, correct?
Loran
That
made
is-
the motion,
Loran
Phil,
motion.
and Phil
Right.
seconded.
Got it. Thank you.
David, do you need me for anything? Because I'm gonna go.
Bye,
We always need you, Pamela.
Bye,
Paulette.
guys. Stay
Paulette.
safe. Be
Bye,
well.
Paulette.
Bye.
Bye.
Aye.
See you
Bye.
soon, hopefully.
Yes.
Bye. Okey doke. 5D, applications for licensing by waiver of examination. The following individuals were approved under section 21A-8, etc. I'll just run through this. Wait, we keeps going, I believe,
You're not
yes.
going to read them all.
I'm not gonna read any of them. I will ask Bob if this is the final list, all 80 candidates, or if there's anybody else we need to add to this, or should be noted as added.
Not at this point, but
Okay.
it's changing daily, so that's the most up-to-date, I have right now.
Very good. So there's no action we need to take on that. There's no comments, Bob, on any of these candidates from your perspective.
Correct. No, they all have been reviewed. They're all in order. It's presented for the board's information. There's quite a few, as you can see.
Yes, quite a few, because it's representing at least two meetings.
Yes.
5E is also for information. We have
Correct.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Interesting, WSP is only now asking for joint, is this for joint practice? Corporate practice? Interesting. I'd like to know if you could comment on that. WSP has been a well-known AE firm in the state for some time. Is there something about this? Is it a different organizational? Did they change their corporate name, Bob? I mean,
You know what, David, I'd have to go back into their file to see. I don't have a copy of the application here.
does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask about any of these firms?
No, sir.
Nope.
Okay.
I can look into the David.
Only if there's something to talk about, Bob, for the
Right.
next meeting, we could have that discussion. But if it's all legit, I'm not questioning the due diligence of the department in reviewing these firms. So we had no joint practice for this meeting.
Right. Correct.
Okay. I would like to add. Go ahead.
No, just in general on these corporate applications, there's an awful lot of back and forth between the department and the applicants. I mean, things are followed through, to the nth degree, not to, between myself and my coworkers. So sometimes these applications are held up for a while because of the simplest things, but what they need to provide, they need to provide. So.
Understood. Very good. All right. I would like to add. I think we received in February. Everybody received an email about the 2020 NCARB education standards, and I wanted to add to our agenda. I thought that was going to be voted on at the annual meeting. Does anybody have anything? Does anybody remember that?
I'm sorry, I don't.
No.
I'll say vaguely.
It's a polite way of saying no.
Almost no.
I'm not even close to vaguely.
I'm trying to think. It was a link that people were supposed to review, and it did. I do believe that we were asked to comment. We had a period of time to comment before early June.
Yeah, I now I vaguely remember too, but
Angela, are you there?
Yeah,
Did we-
sorry.
Okay. Do you recall that email about commenting on the education standards?
I do, but I didn't really dive into it. Was that something that we were?
Well, I think
Did we have a
I'm bringing it
deadline
up because if anybody has an interest, I know that you're an educator, smile, that this might be something of particular interest to you, but I might be wrong.
Well, of course, everything NCARB related is interesting to me, but the timing is not good.
Not
for me.
good. Okay. Well, I guess I'll leave.
If it's a short task, David, I'm happy to look at it.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm not much for educational standards. I think it's just, these are just guidelines. I believe that would be, I'm actually not very sure.
Well, and my connection with, the University of Hartford and working with Elizabeth Petrie, who's also on this scholars committee, where NCARB has reached out to educators who are, some are licensed architects, some are not. I often have dialogue with her about architectural program offerings and alignment with NCARB desires, for the lack of a better word. So, maybe I should take a look at it.
Well, I would encourage any member of the board, if they're interested, to look at the. There's a link to a survey gizmo, I believe it was.
When was that?
When was this? Because I'm not even finding that email, David.
I hope that I had it.
A couple months ago.
Yeah, I was hoping I had it still open, and I don't.
I was looking for it too.
Find it and re-forward either of you. That would be helpful. Save me searching.
Let me. I can find it.
Yeah, thank you.
I found it this morning. So, or I might have found it on the NCARB site, and that's probably where I would go to validate that. Anyhow, just bear with me for a second. Yeah, no, let me find that, and I don't want to waste anybody's time, and get back to that. So, so now we're at item 6, the end of our agenda. Comments or concerns of any person present today?
I have one.
Please.
Excuse me,
Gina?
David, excuse me for 1 second. It's Phil Cerrone. I have the email. Do you want me to forward it to everybody?
Please, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
So Gina Calabro from AIA Connecticut.
Thanks, David. I did have a question. I was on a call last night with the University of Hartford Advisory Board, and they brought up IPAL, the Integrated Path to Architect Licensure.
Yes.
That's coming through from NCARB, and I said I would bring it up to the board today at the meeting if it was something that you are looking at. Their concern was they were told by NCARB that not every state is approving this path, and so we wanted to know if I can get back to them on where the ALB stands.
Well, the ALB doesn't have a stance because it's not an issue for us yet, is it? No. Did we accept? Wait a second. IPAL would be from any place. I thought we have discussed this in the past. Anybody, Phil, Angela, Lorraine, Twig, remember the discussions about IPAL, whether we accept that as?
Well, I think since NCARB accepts it, why wouldn't be?
Yeah, our statutes basically follow, for experience, I thought the NCARBs we accept, but that's for other states' experience, I thought.
Yeah,
I'm drawing a blank.
Their concern is that because it's an alternate path, that there's whatever criteria is in the statute. They weren't sure if right now, I believe it's 10 years, right? If you're licensed somewhere else, but what would be considered if they're going through this even though it's NCARB approved, it didn't necessarily mean that every state was going to accept it. That was what they explained to me last night.
Well, what's their issue? Are they considering becoming an IPAL school?
Yes, they are.
So what does it have to do with, I mean, why wouldn't they just do that?
Well,
Because it would apply to other states as well. It's not just about Connecticut. We wouldn't stop them.
correct, but what they wanted to know was they would really like to be able to say that you could get licensed in Connecticut by going through this this path to licensure. And I think that was,
if we have an issue with it, which again, I think I defer back to, if somebody gets an NCARB certificate, no matter how they get it, then we recognize that. Is that something that statutorily we don't say?
You know what? I don't know, and I don't think we can. I can't like dig in and sort of determine that now. But what I can do is I can reach out to Josh back in at NCARB or Maurice, review what we've got now, and have this as an agenda item for our July meeting. Does that make sense to everybody?
and
Yeah,
they're
that's
also,
Sure.
they're sending me a copy of what they were given from NCARB as far as what this meant for the school. So once I receive that copy, I'd be happy to forward that to the board or to you, David.
And
Yeah.
I think so, David, when you talk to Josh, he could probably speak to what happened in those other states where there's programs. What did those boards do? Did they have to do anything or not?
Yeah, we have to determine whether we need a statutory change or not, and whether there needs to be more discussion or not. That's exactly the discussion I would have with Josh. So Bob Kuzmich, please, let's add this to our July agenda under new business. And that would be discussion of acceptance of IPAL credentials for state licensure or something along those lines.
Will do.
Is everybody aware? Do we want to just say what IPAL, in a nutshell, IPAL allows a school, if they're designated as an IPAL school, I believe that your experience during your education accounts under certain rules, and you can be taking your test while you're getting your education and potentially leave school with having taken the exam, having done your experience, and having your NAAB accredited degree. It shortens the period, overall period to licensure by allowing things to occur concurrently. Do I have that more or less right?
I think that's a good synopsis.
Okie doke. Gina, do you have any other issues you'd like to discuss?
Wait, I'm unmuting. Sorry.
No, you
Yeah,
are.
I was waiting for it to unmute. No, nothing at this time. That was all. Thank you.
Anything else from anybody?
David, I have one thing I should have brought up when we talked about the regional meeting, and this addresses something that Gina brought up at one of our meetings, was the issue of architects in Connecticut who are licensed in New York and getting their credits if they take an AI course in Connecticut. So I had a conversation with the director of, I don't know his exact title, but the person that did the presentation for New York, who's I think executive director of that part of their organization. And what he said to me was that they don't just automatically accept AI Connecticut as a continuing ed course, but if it's because of the fact that you could be doing a course that's on, business development, and they won't accept that as part of their CEUs. But if you do a Connecticut, a code related course, then they'll accept that. So they kind of look at each one differently. It's not an automatic where it's an automatic most places. So.
Thank you. I thought we had something on here talking about CEUs. Well, I guess it's 4B. Bob Kuzmich,
Yes.
are we going to be having on our renewal certificate anything about CEUs?
I posed that question to the department. I have not heard back yet, David, with all that's been going on. I'll follow up.
Because that is imminent,
Right.
I would think.
Well, the requirement for the CEUs was in the statute last year.
That's right, but we haven't.
The mechanics of recording it and how, you know, that is in the regs, which, you know, are not approved yet. So we're kind of.
I think we need some direction here, Bob, from the department in terms of how this is going to work. And
Right.
I can't recall, Gina, I've been writing a lot for you guys lately. Did I do one on CEUs?
I'm just waiting for this to unmute. I don't know. I know we posted in our magazine about the regulations, and we let them know that that was upcoming. And I think there was something in there about that, what the changes, not just the CEUs, but also on the merited status as well.
Right.
But if you'd like to put anything else in there, I mean, I think we've told people, my understanding from you previously was that this wouldn't be in effect because of the regulations having to go through legislative review, would not be in the July or 2020 renewal, but would be in the July 2021 renewal. So it would be important for people to start their CEU, collecting their CEUs from August of 2020 to June of 2021, so that when they renew in 2021, they could check the box. That was my understanding, and I think that was even from the last meeting that I thought, I don't know if it was Paulette or I'm sorry,
Julianne probably.
Julianne was there, yeah.
Julianne.
And I believe that was what I took away from it, and that's what I've been telling our membership, that it wouldn't be in this renewal. The box wouldn't be there to check, but they would need to renew in 2021. They would need to check that box.
So do you need further sort of specific communication from us or from me to write for AIA members? And the other one, Bob, was do we send out an email to all? And I'm having this sort of deja vu that did I draft something, Bob, for you, or do I need to draft something?
You need to draft something. It was one of the. You were going to send something to the department or a recommendation from the board on that matter. To my knowledge, I haven't received anything yet. But you were going to draft something. I'm looking to see if it was.
It was. I think it was in the minutes.
Yeah, I'm looking. That's what I'm looking at now.
David, I have a question. It's Phil.
Yeah.
So I understand we all agreed that it wouldn't be implemented till July of 21. I guess my question is, if we're gonna ask people that they're gonna check the box in July 21 and they have to start their CEUs in August 1st of this year, does that mean we're asking them to start CEUs before we've finalized all the regulations, or are we guaranteed that the regulations will be in place before August 1st?
Well, I heard, this is Gina, I heard Paulette say that May 26th is a legislative review, but if they don't meet remotely, I wrote down exactly what she said, it will pass by consent.
Yes.
Right, so I heard that too.
Pass. Yeah. So it's still going to pass in May, no matter whether they meet remotely or not. So at that point, yes, I think after that point, you may want to acknowledge that to all licensees.
Right, so I heard the same thing you heard, but I guess I didn't hear it the exact same way you heard it. What I heard was that if they don't review it, it passes by default. But is there a possibility that they do meet remotely and discuss it and table it?
I don't know. I mean, from my standpoint of how legislative review always worked was if it's on the agenda, that they're going to address it. I don't believe because the public period of comment was already passed that they would, I believe it would just pass, because unless there's some blatant thing that they're very concerned about, I can't imagine they'll table it.
Okay, I'm just asking the question. I'm not disagreeing with
you. But you'll know before your July meeting though.
Can you see my screen now, everybody? So this was from the minutes. So I need to, I guess I need to do this, is draft this
I feel like though, David, there was an article, there was something you wrote for in Archetype magazine. I think we need to refer back to that to see what did you say already.
I think what I said already was that the regulations have, you know, that it was reporting out that the statutes passed, the regulations are being formed. This is different. This is an AIA. This is something that we need to send out, that Bob would actually send out.
To your members. Yeah, no, I agree.
No,
I
not
agree
to members,
with you on that,
to
but it should
all
be
licensees.
Licensees.
To license.
Yeah, but it should be consistent with what you published for the AIA. And I wouldn't make it too complicated. I mean, some of this stuff is up in the air. So what I thought was good about what you published with the AIA was that it was simple. It gave people a status check. It told them they need to start doing their CEUs, and that more information was going to follow.
I'm looking it up now. I know I'm just checking the article, but because I know David has been writing quite a few things for us, so.
I mean, I guess the fundamental question is when the renewals go out for this July, do we just put a note in those renewals that say that effective July 31st of 21, we're going to require a continuing?
Yeah, there was no dates in here. The article that David wrote was basically that the current regulations are drafted addressing this, and that the public comment period actually ended on March 18th. We encourage input. It just said that if there's any, concerns or anything like that, it was very, I can resend it back to you, but there wasn't anything that said anything about future dates in this article.
So I'm going to draft a note. It's obviously something that's going to have to be reviewed through DCP's legal. I presume Julianne would look at it. I don't want to speak for her, but and I could share that draft. I will share that draft. Well, Bob can share it with the board once I'm able to draft it. Of course, we can't take action without being in a public meeting forum. We will be meeting back in July, so I think this is just something that I should put on my agenda right now for. I should put on my list of things to do at this point so that something is ready to go out to licensees at the appropriate time.
Agreed.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm good.
I had two things. Sorry. One was a new business item, well, perhaps a potential new business item. When Phil was talking about the test and, our national committee on the test and keeping a copy of the test safe in Montana, it brought to mind, the whole testing situation now, which is Prometric is closed. The timeline to take tests has been extended. Nobody has any idea when Prometric's going to open again. Is it going to open consistently throughout the country, or is it going to be sort of a state-by-state thing? It's on my mind because there was discussion also at the regional phone call about Steve Schreiber was sharing that there's already discussions about will the test be delivered in the same method, moving forward. People are talking about that. So, I think it's something that we as a board should track. We should also, as much as we could, encourage the local Prometric centers to open in accordance with our governor's instructions to try to give our candidates an advantage. So, I don't know that we need to put it on the minutes or as new business, but I just wanted to bring that up. That's one item. And I have another item, unless you guys have thoughts about that.
I can add to that. I do get an email regarding that. My understanding is Prometric centers around the country are already starting to open, and they are going by whatever the governor's guidelines are. So they are looking at, they should be opening back up sometime towards the end of May, beginning of June in Connecticut. That's what we've been told so far. What they're trying to figure out is that they're also working at the spacing of how people, additional spacing and everything. So I don't know if every center in Connecticut is prepared for that, but I know a few of them are. So as we get more information, I know we've been sending out to our membership But, and since you will be receiving our emails as well, then anything that you need to relay to, or if there's some information that can be put on the DCP site or anything like that, we'll make sure that you're aware as well.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other comments on the testing thing? 'Cause I have one other thing.
We don't really have any input into whether NCARB changes the testing procedure or not, right?
No, unless one of us is on that committee and discussing it actively.
Right. I don't have anything to add.
But if they're not going to allow a different delivery method and Prometric stays closed for, an inordinate amount of time, I think it would be a burden for our candidates.
And for everybody else,
So my other item, I think it was in old business, and I apologize if it got discussed already, but we had sort of we were going to start discussing, and I think we were waiting for Julianne's, she was going to look into the corporate licensure and how the Secretary of State's department interfaces with DCP on renewals and ensuring that corporations are abiding by their percentages. So we just didn't discuss that because we don't have Julianne here today.
Well, we didn't, but Bob, you said when we got to the corporate practice thing that you guys do an inordinate amount of research to make sure. Is part of that you make sure that they meet all the Secretary of State requirements for corporate licenses, how their organization's set up and ownership?
Yes. Yeah.
On renewals, though, not on the initial. We know the initial is investigated, but when their corporation is renewing, do we double check that their most recent minutes that they file with the state of the Secretary of State has the stocks distributed in the correct amounts?
I would say we do not at this point. I mean, basically, I think the way the law reads is that if there is a change, it's on them to report that to us within 30 days of when that happens. Now, we occasionally get correspondence like that, but do we check everyone at renewal? We do not. We were going to see if there was some method of putting something on, or I have to see if there's something on the renewal itself, where it's just an
attestation. We want an attestation on the renewal that requires them to indicate that their corporate ownership continues to comply with Connecticut statutory requirements. And maybe there should be a link to the statutory requirements as well.
Is an attestation enough?
Well, it's a start.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, so similar to how we ask our individual licensees to report whether they've had a felony or a disciplinary action, perhaps we could ask them, has your stock ownership changed? Or, something to that effect.
Well, but those are attestations
that would prompt them to.
I guess I'm feeling like an attestation really wouldn't be a change to our system.
But that is what we do on the felony question is an attestation.
And so is continuing ed's going to be the same way. That's how it is on most applications.
So it's just how you ask the question. Probably is the question.
Yeah, I think the difference that Angela is looking at, this is Lorianne, is that if you just have them check the box, they comply, but the corporate split or ownership could have changed. But it may not matter, Angela, if it's still complying with the law, and that's the key. So, I mean, you could have shares split differently amongst different people, and that would be a change, but it still would comply. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're just looking at, so the reason this came up is that there were, several concerns about basically non-compliant corporate practice in the state recently. Some working on state projects even. So I think, and this action item also came about from our breakout session in DC at the annual conference, saying that this was one of our #1 concerns. So I'm feeling like just adding a checkbox is not addressing it enough.
What would you do, Angela?
So to some extent, I think it's going to depend upon how much additional work you want members of the DCP to go in and look at the documents. If they check off a box, you just accept it. If they change their status in some way, then you're going to have to go in and look at it, even if it's still, in compliance with the law. So I guess, you've got to figure out how much oversight you want and whether or not Connecticut has the capacity for that.
Right. And I think the question we posed to Julianne was, what is the Secretary of State's office doing about it? When they receive the annual business meeting minutes from these corporations, do they look at them and see that, ownership might have swung to non-licensed individuals?
They don't care.
So
They're
Julianne was going to look into, well, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think anybody's caring about this.
Well, no, but
I
if
think what
there's an
Angela is
attestation-
saying that somebody needs to care about this.
Well, but if there's an attestation and
Angela-
somebody lies about it, and they're not in compliance, and they say that they are, that's like a felony or something.
So we're just relying
Well,
on the complaint process then.
Yeah.
So is there something that can be incorporated so that it isn't simply a box that can be checked off without some thought? When the application is being submitted for renewal, sometimes, who submits this? Who completes that application and who submits it? And if it's an administrative assistant, they may not understand what the rules are, and so they say, yeah, everybody is still here, check off that box, nothing has changed.
Okay.
When in fact, something has changed, but the individual doing the form, whatever, is not aware of it. So to Angela's point, can we be more specific in phrasing that checkbox so that somebody has to put some thought into it and say, oh yeah, we did change something at the shareholders meeting or whatever. Something changed in our corporate structure.
Why couldn't they just list on their renewal? They could say, okay, list your stock ownership. That's what you do in annual business meeting minutes anyway. Why can't they list, John Smith, 25%, Paul Carpenter, 65%. Why couldn't they just do that?
And they could actually have two
They
boxes.
can, yeah.
Has anything changed from the prior submission, and then list. The other thing is the person who is attesting to it should be a managing director, principal, or whatever of the company. It should not be a clerical person. It should be an officer.
Okay. I didn't know how that got filled out.
Whether or not that's the way it is now, you can assure that that person has knowledge by requesting that it be someone who is more of a principal or president or manager of the firm. And that would do away with allowing an administrative person to sign the attestation.
Yeah, Bob, in terms of the corporate practice, there's obviously got to be some contact. Is there any rule as to who that contact is in terms of those corporate licenses?
Well, we ask individuals to post the application has to designate the individual as in responsible charge. That's essentially the contact, the person that has responsible charge, their license number in Connecticut.
Well, there you go. So I think that protects, whether it gets designated to, a clerical person and they're unaware, then that's on that firm. The responsibility remains with that firm.
It's on the application.
Okay.
It also goes into our database online, the Kavoo licensing database. As we put new applications in, we enter the license number of the individual in charge and their contact information.
I don't believe that we need, as the licensing board, to know who their stockholders are and what shares they own, only that they're in compliance with the statutes.
Sorry, go ahead, David.
No. I mean, and if there's a complaint and somebody knows, then there's a complaint and that gets investigated. And if they're lying on their form, then they're in big trouble, because that goes beyond just being being not in compliance. That becomes that they lied on a document that has, I would think, Lorianne, some level of legal standing.
Yeah, it does. It has even more if it's actually certified, which is a more cumbersome process where you actually have someone who's a notary, make sure that they are the person who is in fact signing, but you've got a certification on the document itself that says that this is true,
Well, I can't see us going to that format for the license renewals.
It's a cumbersome process.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think we should take
I
this.
just know how I think, and the excuse me, the things that I find helpful when I'm completing forms are different prompts. So, not that I would fraudulently, fail to disclose anything, but that I just didn't recall or didn't know what the statute was, and so just saving me the work of having to look it up or whatever, for the regulations, just checking that box without thinking.
Well, I mean, it seems to me you could have two questions. One is, has ownership changed? And if yes, there's a second box, are the stock ownership in compliance with, Connecticut statute, and we put it right in, those could be two questions in there. And if the answer is, yes, then fine. And if it's like, no, that's like, well, that's a, you don't get one, then, you don't get your corporate license is not renewed. Does that make sense? I can, work up that I could work on that with the DCP if people want me to.
Yeah, something like that would be helpful to me if I were to fill out this form.
Well, and I think if the form is filled out electronically, then having a link to the statute would be your perfect way of rounding it out.
Yeah, I'll see if that can happen. I just don't know technically, because now we're dealing with some kind of BizNet solution or something like that has its own rules. So let me find out.
Well, I appreciate the enhancement of the process because I think it's definitely needed given our recent discussions. I also would appreciate Julianne's response to, she was going to look into what the Secretary of State does, both upon, initial filing of corporate practice documents and then, anything to do with the annual submission of minutes as well. So hopefully we can leave this on here and hear back from her at some point.
Leave what on where?
Well, it was
item, I think.
agenda item.
Leave it on the agenda.
Meeting. Yes, she was directed to look at what the Secretary of State's process was and report back to us. Maybe it didn't make it into the minutes, but I recall the conversation. I thought it was in the minutes.
It's not on the agenda, though.
Well, I think
maybe what we do is put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes.
To ask Ann to come in.
Item 4C under old business, this agenda.
Yeah, so
Remember,
that's
general discussion concerning. Right.
Well, yes, 4C. I'm sorry, you're correct. Let's leave that on there. Let's expand that a little bit so that Bob, and we can, based on our discussion here.
Absolutely. We'll
and in the meantime, I will reach out to Julianne and see if I can get this discussion going in preparation for the next meeting.
You.
Any other?
No, I just want to say I appreciate it. I know I'm expressing some level of frustration with this, and I just you know, Gina just responded in her time at AIA over the last couple of years, she hasn't gotten a single complaint about corporate practice not in compliance, and we know it's happening. So, you know, I just, hopefully whatever steps we can take that are feasible will enhance our process.
Right, I agree with you, Angela, because as you know, I've run into a couple situations where where people were practicing without the proper licenses. Corporate
Okay.
practicing.
So now I'm going to ask a question of Jason if he's still on board here. Because my computer's telling me I have to re-sign into Teams, if I do that, I lose connection. So I'm not going to re-sign into Teams. I have no way of looking at if there's been any public questions that have come up. Maybe the other members can click on that and see if there's any questions.
There are no submitted questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other concerns that anybody has that we can talk about, or are we at the end of the meeting?
I'm good.
I'm done.
This is
Lorianne?
Lorianne. I'm fine.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, so moved. Second by Barkin. All in
Second.
favor by acclamation. Aye.
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 Okay. Good meeting.
Excellent.
We'll talk soon.
Saved on gas too.
Bye.
All right.
All right, have a
Y'all
good day.
take care.
Stay safe,
Bye-bye.
everyone. All right, Jen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.